Call to order.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Yes. Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Gabriel.
Yes. We now take a moment of silence. Thank you. And I'll rise for pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Gonzalez, do we have any agenda changes or additions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to remove agenda item 6.06 and 7.04. We will bring those back on another date.
Okay, thank you. Approval of agenda as with changes made.
Make a motion that we accept the agenda with the changes made.
Have a motion to have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan State.
Yes.
Mr. Gabriel.
Yes. Okay, just so people, if they're watching and keeping up with the agenda, we're moving matters discussed in closed session to the end because we're going back into closed session and then we'll come back out and certify and take that vote. So now we'll move on to citizen comment period. There are none. Okay. May minutes are up for your review. It has been noted that May 26th was not a regular scheduled meeting, but a special meeting date, and that will be adjusted on that one. But just remind yourself to review those so they will be approved at the next meeting. Moving on to an informational item, monthly financial, Ms. Sechrist.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. You all have been provided with the monthly financials for May, where total expenditures and revenue were $35,636,971.60. Along with that, you have been provided the local match calculation that we did balance with the treasurer's office. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
I do before you move off this one. We're 91.67% through the year. Thank you
sir.
for that percentage, always there. It helps.
So,
Nothing is above that, of course, debt service is, but that won't be there next year. So in some of them, we're significantly below,
yes, sir.
like the maintenance and operations.
So a lot of the funds that we had currently used in maintenance and operations were COVID money, rather than our local funds. So that's why that percentage is lower at this time than what you might have expected it to be.
Okay. 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 Any other questions from the board? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vickers. Instructional update, Mr. Benson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Tonight, we have a document that we passed out to kind of talk a little bit about what's going on instructionally as we wrapped up the school year and then begin to look forward for the upcoming year. We've been providing updates all along regarding beginning back in February regarding where we were in terms of student grades. So that's your charts there that you've been seeing. Just to kind of give you an idea, at the elementary level for the 1F category or 1 failure, that would be 28 students that all those bars equal for the 4 different schools. The middle was 53 and the high was 86. So that gives you some numbers, kind of where you're at. In the 2F category, there were 8 elementary students, 13 middle, and 59 high. And then 3F, 3 or more F, there were 5 elementary, 4 middle, and 43 high. Which certainly that the number of students at the high school level is not exactly where we wanted to be, but I kind of want to give you some perspective to that as well. If you look at the Page County High School, which their graphs are in the bottom right, and you look at February the 10th was the first day we gave that first bar, that blue bar there, that was 139 students. And so when we finished on 6/2, we were down to 13 students. So that kind of shows you where we were, where we went. And I attribute that to a lot of different things. Partially the fact that we were able to get students back in school played a significant role in helping with our failure rate. But I think it's important for the board to know, man, that's a significant improvement there in the number there.
What was the middle school count on 3 failures?
4. That was
4,
just
okay.
4 students.
Gotcha.
Yeah, 5 at the elementary, 4 at the middle, but 43 at the high.
Right.
So that means 30 of them are at LHS and 13 of them are at Page. But we're really proud of where we came in some of these categories. I think it should be noted here this evening. And these are the students that, this is it for this school year. But I thought it was a good starting point as we started to talk about the unfinished work that still has to be done.
Any of those high school students coming back, that are seniors coming back?
Yes.
Okay, so they're coming back for summer school.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So then the next page is the SOL scores, and there's not a lot to say here. I think I would start by saying it was a snapshot in time. We knew, the state knew, we knew. When you have a school year like we've had, we knew that there were going to be some struggles. We knew there were some things the cards were stacked against us a little bit. Let's just say that. We talk about the technology and the internet access and the other things that we needed to have here in Page County to continue with instruction without having students in the seat. We knew where there was going to be some struggles. We've had some discussion here at the central office level with the instructional team, and I think this is a good example. When you start to think about a second grade student who had their school year abruptly ended in March of 2019, and may have not finished some certain topics, and then came back in the following school year as a 3rd grade student. Now we're in the 2021 school year, and we had power standards, and we at the surface level we hit a lot of different topics, but I'm not going to say that we were able to go as deep as we need to do, and the test requires. There were some areas and categories that we certainly have struggled with, and we've begun to look at the reports out of Pearson, the student performance by question reports and different things. And we've already started to make notes. I would say here this evening, grade 3 math, for instance, we've seen significant categories are really low in measurement, geometry, probability, and statistics. Well, we know those are a topic that was covered, and I'll use my example, in the spring of 2019, and then we came back and hit it. So students didn't get what they needed to, and we know that. And we've gone through some of the other things. Comprehension, nonfiction comprehension was a big struggle for grade 3 students. And so we started to look at the SOL score reports, and we're starting to try and make some decisions and have those discussions as we plan for the upcoming year. So just want to make note of that.
Yeah, the question I have, and one of the questions that I posed to get this data is, from your SBBQ reports for your students, those who are coming for summer school, knowing which category they're low performing in, has that been looked at to be able to help that student?
Those reports are not available. We have to go individual student reports. The division reports are not available yet.
Yeah, but are the schools report
Yes.
available?
Yes.
And then,
No, the individual student reports are available. The school reports are not.
but you need the student report to know where their weaknesses are to be able to help them in summer school.
So that's what we're doing. We're looking at those reports.
Okay. So they're going to be giving instruction in their weaker areas, and
They're using, right,
their
they're
categories.
using that school report, and they're using the teacher anecdotal data, and the things that we said, this student, said, this is a summer school candidate, okay? And that person is coordinated with our summer school coordinator to say, what are the things that this individual needs to
Okay.
be able to be considered, to start to address the weaknesses that are present.
So once they get one concept, they can then move into another concept area.
And I will say the challenge is there because it's individually, student by student by student. And we're
Right.
trying to do that for them.
But you could group them by their needs.
Yeah.
Because you might find all of third grade, because of, the year we've had is low in a certain area.
Yeah.
But by looking at that report, it's going to tell you where your weaknesses are. But other things that you need to take into consideration, yes, it could be the pandemic, but is it also looking at the indicators? Could it also be the verbs that were asked, and do they understand those verbs? In other words, like solve, explain, list. Is that the problem that the student have? If you look at that report, it tells you where they're having issues, and if it's issues with everyone that's doing those high order thinking skills, then that may be something that we need to look at to address.
And I would agree with you there, Mr. Breeden. I mean, we certainly have said, I think I used the word, we hit things on the surface. We didn't have the deeper learning that it needed to occur just simply because of time and different things. And so, and we know that the SOL test requires students to go deeper to be able to, answer the questions appropriately. And that's another, hurdle that we need to get across.
Okay.
So we have the right now, just so I make sure you understand, we have the student reports and we have the school reports. We don't have the division reports.
Right. And you need, for summer school, you would need the student report. So as long as you have the student report, you've got what you need to help those students. Now, are all the tests equated?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Find out from, who's DDOT?
Clint.
Find out from Mr. Runyon if all the tests and all the forms are equated. Because if you're missing any data, that will be your holdup there.
Dr. Gonzalez looked at with us the other week, and we're starting to see we're not seeing the division, the bigger snapshots, so we're having to go individually by school.
And that generally comes later. But for summer school, knowing that it starts at the end of June, for recovery purposes, you'll need those SBPQ by student to be able to assist those students and to group them by need.
Right. And so when I make the statements here this evening and I say, for grade 3, we struggled with nonfiction comprehension, that's something that when we looked at the 4 elementary schools in Page County, that's something that we saw in all 4 schools as a weakness.
Across the division.
Across the-
You didn't have the division to
I
tell
didn't
you.
have the division
report.
to tell me. Exactly.
Because when you get the division report, you can tell where there's some weaknesses are. But in each school, that report also would give you some clues. Is it a teaching issue? Is it a curriculum issue? Is it a resource issue? So if they're doing particularly well, let's say at Shenandoah, and they're not doing particularly well at at Stanley, what's the differences there?
Right.
So it gets you to ask some questions that maybe be able to help the other school that's not performing as well.
Exactly.
Especially knowing that Luray Elementary is not fully accredited and Page Middle is not fully accredited.
And I think if you look at some of your data, you're starting to see there are some schools that really did well, and there are some high percentages there. I would say that there's some stronger teachers in those situations where that happened.
And you don't know how they approached it when schools closed, of how much was actually lost at the end of the school year versus if they really didn't keep on learning at one school versus another. So it's gonna take us a couple of years. This isn't gonna be fixed in summer school.
No.
So.
Mr. Runyon texted me and said that the reports are all included.
Okay. All the forms are,
Yeah.
okay. The other question is, do we have in place a benchmark system to be able to test the students as we go through the year?
This year was a big struggle for us. That's part of our switch from Power School Assessment to Mastery Connect. That the Power School Assessment platform, in terms of being Dr. Painter said it was best.
It used to be interactive achievement. It
And
was great
performance
then,
matters, and it's horrible.
but it's
It's
since
not the
it's
same.
been bought out.
Yeah.
It's
It's
went
not,
downhill.
yeah. And so what we have, it's not user friendly. Let's just call it that, okay? And so we did some homework and we started to ask around and we looked at some other programs that school divisions are using. And we found that Mastery Connect is a lot like the old interactive achievement and is quite a bit more user friendly. So we're hoping to be able to go through that. The other thing you have to remember is the VDOE next year is going to have their own set of assessments that students are going to take through the course assessments. So that's going to be another layer that we're going to have of data that we're also going to have to be looking at.
Yeah, but we need something locally to know to, as a former superintendent I used to have, say dipstick, where you can take a dipstick of knowing where students are to readjust teaching and to keep them on track for the end of the year test for the state. And knowing that we're all gonna, because at some point accreditation is gonna come back and you don't want the lost learning to keep affecting when the state says, no, you've got to make it this year. So we've got to put things in place.
That's our goal. That's why you guys were kind and gracious enough to approve the Mastery Connect program. We're really excited about that. We've been able to get our students, we're starting training. We want to get back to those days, exactly what you're talking about.
And is there going to be fidelity with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
So, yeah. If there are other questions related to SBA. So then the next couple pages, or the last 3 pages on the document, I just tried to do some summarizing of what are some things going on at each of the different levels, okay? And so at the elementary level, just to kind of hit a couple of the high points here, we have basically 2 programs going on. We began our summer enrichment program this week. And that's really just aimed at the relationship piece, the SEL piece. That's trying to get kids back to school and feeling good about school and some of the things going on there. We had 9 students attend today, and we're making calls this afternoon and evening to try to get a few more there. You can see we sent quite a few invitations out. You know, it's a little disappointing to see you send out over 123 invitations to students and 9 show up. But we're trying to make those individual calls to get them in. And we have done what I would call the more academic version of the elementary summer school is our summer bridge program. We've sent 221 invitations, and we've got 105 that have indicated, yes, I'm coming to that program. So
less than half.
less than half. We're certainly looking at the master schedule next year. We know we need an intervention block as part of that, and we're trying to tie in things cross-curricular wise. So I'm working on developing some of those lessons. You can see we've scheduled curriculum planning meetings when we're trying to get teachers together to come together to have those instructional discussions. SEL and the social emotional mental health piece of it is still right at the forefront of what we're doing. Some say that that's more important than the academic piece, but we're keeping that, trying to keep that at the top of the list. And then, you know, another piece to our strategies is, you know, getting some of the other instructional positions in place as we try to recover. We worked with Mr. Moran today to finalize the job description for the interventionist piece, so we're hoping to get that up and posted. And then, you know, participating in different professional development. I will say there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of companies trying to reach out and say, we're the next, we've got the magic ticket, but we're trying to be strategic in what we do. At the middle school level, you'll see the back, or the next page. We actually began last week with our summer programming, and I feel pretty good about our attendance so far. You know, at Lorraine Middle School, we sent 69 invitations. We've got 21 students attending summer school right now. That's not, remember, we've got 3 different sessions, so we got 21 of the 69 at this session, so to speak. So that's what you need to remember for that as well. You know, we got 33 up at Page Middle, and teachers and coordinators have felt really good about how things went the first week. We touched base with them today, and things seem to be going well. So they're expecting 11 days of summer school, and then we'll get into our next section. Doing the same sorts of things, looking at the master schedule and making sure those changes are in place. We hope to put a 40-minute RTI or intervention block at the middle school level as well. Again, working through some of our SEL type of topics. And a couple of things that you see here that maybe you didn't see at the elementary level, you know, repurposing spaces. When we did the one-to-one initiative that we were able to do through some of the COVID funds, the need for computer labs, a space where you would take your general class to. If everybody has a device, you can start to repurpose those spaces. And that work has begun with Blake and his team as well. Maybe I should note at the bottom, I think this is important. We've started to just talk to teachers and ask them, how do you feel about those 3 questions that we've listed at the bottom? And we've started to collect those answers. We've got 26 responses that have come in already. And the answers are pretty varying, but I think it's important that we also get our teachers' ideas and feelings about what happened this year and use those ideas, incorporate those ideas into the plan. So I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that as well. And then at the high school level, the last page on the sheet, same sort of thing. We have summer school going on there. Just to make sure a couple, again, hit some highlights here. At Luray High School, we have 30 students attending daily, which I think is pretty good for our high school population. But more importantly, we've got 3 seniors who were not able to graduate at summer school, which is a good thing. There are 2 students that we feel like we've lost there that we just cannot have any contact with, but it was nice to see those 3 seniors. So we're hoping to recoup them and have them have an on-time, so to speak, graduation. And then the same sort of things going on up at Page. We've got 57 students attending, but we've got 6 of the 8. If you remember, there were 8 seniors that were in jeopardy and didn't make it the first time. So we've got 6 of those students. So talking to both high school principals today, looks like we may have a need for a summer graduation at some point. So that's going to be a good thing.
So there's 4 seniors from counting the 2 high schools that will not be graduating.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's 4 that we can't get in touch with as of tonight.
Okay.
So I don't want you to think that we've given up and we wrote those guys off. We're still trying to make contact. But I can honestly say some of them are over 18 and they're no longer answering.
And they could have moved out of Page County, so.
It's been a challenge. And we can incentivize it all we want, but at some point the student has to want to come. And that's kind of where we're at.
Okay.
So again, high school, we're still looking at our 5 block schedule, which will be a little bit different than our 4x4 that maybe we had pre-COVID. Trying to go back to some catch up and get back on track, so to speak. If you remember, and I made note here on the paper, this past year we were only able to offer 6 different classes at the high school level. So we have a few students that we are, just credit-wise, we'd like to kind of get back on track. Our 5x5 schedule will actually offer us the ability to offer 10 credit opportunities there. And it also offers things for, at the high school we do it a little bit differently, just course-wise. When you have that extra block in the schedule, you can offer what I would say more remedial academic electives. So even though you may be in, let's just say, English 10, if you struggle in English 9, we may put you in what we call a reading and composition class to try to either build those reading or writing skills that you're missing. So when you have a few more opportunities in the schedule, those electives are a possibility. So that's something that we thought about. And then again, you see some of the same things. Just again, the social emotional piece. The high school also is looking to have specialists. And then again, the feedback, I think, has been important from our high school staff. I'd be happy to try and answer any other questions.
Just a point of note.
Okay.
On the SOL scores, they are unadjusted at this point, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because they will change once they get adjusted.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll come back and give you the final percentages. I think, when we saw your email, your request, we wanted to make sure we tried to get as
Right. And this is all that you have right now until they get adjusted. And that's just adjusted for the board. That's just adjusting them to the state of who counts and not counts and all your retakes and all that other stuff. That's how they readjust everything.
One thing the board should probably remember, and it just kind of caught my attention as I'm looking down here, as you go through some of those higher level classes, the chemistry, for instance, you see we only have 2 students taking that course. That's because the board should remember, if you've earned the verified credit in either earth science or biology, and you have that, you don't need to take the chemistry SOL. So that's
To graduate.
To graduate,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, that gives you an idea there. At LHS, there was only 2 students that still needed the science verified credit for a page. But those are students that haven't been able to get that passing score yet in the previous opportunities.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent.
You're welcome.
Informational with Ms. Jeffries.
Just right out there.
Assessment and Wellness Policy, EFE. Evening, Ms. Jeffries.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I am bringing to you yet again our proposed local wellness policy. Attached to the agenda, you will also find the 9 triennial assessments that were completed at each school level. In addition to what you've seen the past few times that I've been here, there was an additional sentence added to the wellness policy. At the middle of the first page under school meals, and I did underline it, where we added the Page County School Board incorporates and adopts the nutrition standards in 8 VAC 740-10 through 8 VAC 2740-40. And that is based off of VSBA policy update that came out recently. Other than that, I haven't made any additional changes to the draft wellness policy, and I am here to answer any questions and hopefully to get some action on this particular policy at the next meeting.
Would you have any questions?
This is one we've seen twice, right?
Yes.
Is there any reason why we can't? Is there any reason why we can't go ahead and move on it so she can turn it in? Or
When is this? This isn't due. It's just we have to take action by a certain time, right?
The triennial assessments had to be completed by September 30th, which they have now been done. I will report back to the state once everything has been finalized and approved. After today, I will also be posting those triennial assessments in addition to being part of the board minutes. They will also go on our nutritional services website for the public to be able to access.
Okay. Do they have to, is it required for them to comment before we approve it?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. All right. CEP application update.
Attached, and I apologize, I did not print a handout for each of you, but I believe it was attached to the agenda last week. Effective in March of this past year, the Code of Virginia was changed to require school divisions that had an identified student percentage, that's the number of students within a school that is automatically qualified for free and reduced price meals based off of someone in the household receiving SNAP, which is formerly known as food stamps, TANF, temporary assistance for needy families, and or income-based Medicaid. We take the number of students that come in that direct certification process. We then determine the percentage of students within each of the schools that are directly certified to create an ISP, an identified student percentage. The General Assembly, again, effective March 31st, does require that all schools with an identified student percentage of 40 or greater apply to make an application to operate the community eligibility provision, CEP, at a school that has that identified student percentage. This coming school year, it's based off of an April 1 data point, all of our elementary schools and both of our middle schools do meet that 40% ISP threshold. The high schools are also potentially eligible to operate CEP. And this school year is that we just finished, all of our students ate at no cost to the students based off of some United States Department of Agriculture waivers. The USDA has already announced that, again, next school year, our students will eat at no cost to the students. And additionally, our meals, once they're served, will be reimbursed at the full rate of a free student. So this year's a kind of unique year coming up in that we could operate the CEP at all of our schools, all 8 of them, with no financial risk involved. So you might say, well, why would we go ahead and do that? Well, there are a few things. We would reduce the administrative burden here at the central office because we would no longer need to accept any free and reduced price meal applications. Not only is that a burden reduction here, but that's a burden reduction to our families. No longer will they have to fill out a free and reduced price meal application, at least for the upcoming school year. Additionally, all of our students, there would be no stigma attached to the meal. You would go through the line, you'd get a meal, everybody is treated exactly the same way. There's no stigma attached to that meal. And then we additionally won't accrue any additional student meal debt, and we can move our students through the lines quicker. The last, and what I think of particularly this school year, most important is that they have already approved pandemic EBT for next summer, summer 2022. And if we operate CEP at all of our schools automatically with no paperwork needed, every single one of our students would receive that pandemic EBT in the summer 2022. With no additional work or paperwork for the families. And that, I say, is a benefit to everyone here in Page County who has a child in Page County Public Schools. So just to kind of clarify, I would like to recommend that we would go ahead and apply to operate CEP at all 8 schools. In terms of, again, this year, no worry of financial losses. When we come back around next year about this time, if we are in a different situation, there's no harm for us dropping out of any particular schools. It will just be reduced paperwork for our families, the guarantee of that pandemic EBT money next summer for all of those families. And we do need to apply for the 6 schools definitely that we're required to by June 30. And then I was hoping that by next board meeting, you would decide if you would allow me to apply for the 2 high schools in addition.
I have a question. When you were speaking earlier about students going through the lines and there would be no
Stigma.
stigma of them, I never realized there was a stigma with any student going through, got a free lunch, reduced lunch, or whatever. They just went through the line.
So there is an appearance that people believe there is a stigma. Let me go back, because when I was a child in Page County Public Schools, it's been a little while, but there were colored tickets.
Yes.
And there were green tickets and
Yellow
orange tickets and,
Okay.
and
I
since,
remember those.
White
I-
tickets for milk only.
right. And since the time that I, prior to my starting in this position, we have used a PIN number system and people are not overtly identified. However, people that are my age or close to it still remember the tickets and they still believe that that may be a
The
fact.
case, yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
Because every student has his or her own PIN number and the computer knows,
Exactly.
and only the computer knows if that student qualifies or not.
And then this program for next year, you said goes through the summer as well?
So the USDA has already approved waivers that will go through June of 2022. And the funding for pandemic EBT has already been approved through entire summer of 2022. Summer, we would typically feed any child 18 and under at no cost. And so we're continuing that, and it will continue until the beginning of school year 2022, 2023.
Any other questions? So you'll bring this on the 28th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a way that you can already start that process and then hit send when we approve it
Yes,
on the
sir.
28th? Okay.
Yes.
Because it only gives you 2 days. Okay.
I will start it's a online application and I can start it and then not submit it until
Until
after
approval.
the meeting. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A governor's executive order update, Mr. Moran.
Good evening, Board. In the ever-changing landscape of COVID, we are moving through different executive orders. We're now on executive order 79. What that stated was that if you are around students pre-K to 12, you must still wear a mask. Today, thanks to Dr. Payne pointing out the superintendent's memo, that did state that if you are not around K-12, pre-K-12 students, and you are vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask. For example, here in the boardroom, we do not need to wear a mask as long as you've been vaccinated. And so I just want to bring that to your attention.
I have a question. I got a text before the meeting from a parent, and they've heard somewhere that all students will be required to wear masks next year when school opens. I told them I didn't know anything.
As of right now, if you come to school, you have to wear a mask, but that may be changing as the summer progresses.
So that has been in place.
Nothing has changed yet in regard to student masks.
Okay.
However, in the fall, it will change.
That hasn't been determined yet.
Okay. Gotcha.
Those changes might reflect 12 and up
Mhm.
vaccination, below 12, that kind of thing, maybe
Well, I
some
would
kind of
just wait and
split.
see where they want to
Yeah.
go.
Any other questions? Okay. VSBA policy updates, Mr. Moran.
Yes, sir. I sat through the most recent VSBA policy update. I had not anticipated being such a large policy update. With that being said, many of the policies that you most recently have heard when Mr. Harlow presented, the language in those policies has changed. I will get to that in a second. Let me start with a couple that would be new. As you may or may not know, the laws regarding marijuana use in this state are changing. With that, our health instruction will change. And the statement that will change in that is, it used to be that they would talk about marijuana use and it being a drug and that sort of thing. They will change that now to use of marijuana as underage use, much like alcohol, and presented that way. With the changes of marijuana, that does not change how we handle our drivers, in particular bus companies, those that hold a CDL. We will continue to do random testing, and if a driver tests positive for marijuana, then we will have to proceed along those lines in regards to suspension of a license, and then requiring a negative test and counseling before moving forward with them being able to transport students again. Other things that I will bring to your attention, there was a change in policy GAA in regards to compensatory time for employees that are 40-hour work week employees. We can no longer offer compensatory time. That means it's not that you can work somebody 45 hours one week and say, hey, you can bank this 5 hours for later in the future. And that's considered time and a half. However, with that being said, we've looked at it, and what we can do is if somebody is working over one day, we can adjust their time schedule so that they don't work as much later on in the week, so that they don't exceed 40 hours. If they do exceed 40 hours, and that is time and a half, and all overtime must be approved by the superintendent or the superintendent designee before we offer that time and a half. The rest of the updates was mostly a change in language in regards to our policies. Many of our policies deal with discrimination, whether it be discrimination in regards to students or employees. Okay, so the rest of the language that was changed was mostly in regards to that, and it has to do specifically with gender identification. What the things I will bring to your attention are school records will no longer reflect gender. We went from school records. Okay. The other thing that is going to be of most interest will be facilities must be non-discriminatory for gender identity. Okay, so that's all the facilities within Page County. We have superintendent designees have sought some clarification from the school VSBA, or excuse me, Virginia School Board Association attorney, Ms. Ewing, and I will read her reply to it. And she says, "Dear school board members, during conversations arising from the recently released VSBA main policy updates, several superintendents have mentioned to VSBA that they think their board members would appreciate additional information regarding the legal requirements applicable to providing restroom and locker room access to transgender students. This law is clear that transgender students must be allowed to use the restrooms and locker rooms for the gender with which they identify. Students may be given other options, such as the use of private restrooms. However, if transgender students choose to use the restrooms or locker rooms designated for use by the gender with which they identify, the law requires them to be permitted to do so." So I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. There's a new law that takes effect. I can answer any other questions in regards to this.
Are we looking at, there's probably going to be objection to that from families, and what will we do? For example, if there's a male student who says he's a female and he can go to the girls' restroom, and if there are girls who won't use the restroom because a male might be in there, do we have a plan of action of how we're going to handle that? Because I can see it coming.
Yeah, and I see it coming as well. Okay, with that being said, it is state code.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's something that's up to the state legislature and government.
Okay.
From the instructional side, we've talked about, possibly not having students change for PE. Just, if you have PE that day or during that semester, you need to wear clothing that you would feel comfortable with, be able to participate in.
Can they opt out of PE altogether? Take another leg?
It's required.
Yes.
Graduation requirement. So, trying to look at those.
Is there a virtual phys ed?
All things that we've got to consider. Trying to.
With private restrooms, I mean, how does that work?
Well, one, we would have to identify restrooms as private restrooms. Most of our facilities are not put like that way. It's not like we have a family restroom here. So that would be something where we'd have to identify restrooms. But even if you did identify restrooms, and a transgender student wanted to use whatever they identify with, and by law, they have to be allowed to do that.
But a private, would that be designated as a male or female?
No, you could not.
So what are you gonna do with the doors? You just gonna take everything off the doors?
No, we'll probably still leave girls' bathroom, boys' bathroom, but if that student was to identify as a boy or a girl.
Well, I know my daughter, she didn't use the bathroom once in her whole 17 years, 12 years, 13 years. So, I guarantee there's gonna be a lot of people holding things. Gotta do it. It's an uncomfortable position.
And I guess this applies to, we've had girls play male sports, football, for example. That's happened everywhere. But my understanding is they always dressed in a separate locker room. So now that changed, they can actually be dressing in the boys' locker room.
No,
You're saying?
because she wouldn't necessarily identify as a boy. She's just a girl playing football.
But I'm saying if she would identify herself as a male,
Oh,
then she would be allowed.
That's VHSL. That's their domain, correct?
Yeah, but they'll be required to adhere to the same state code.
So the bathrooms currently monitored by an adult?
No.
no.
In elementary, a lot of, the restrooms are in the individual classroom.
Or a teacher will walk students to a bathroom, particularly in elementary.
Right.
And in middle school, high schools, people are in the hallways.
Yeah, because there could be conflict either way.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you could
We
have
wanna keep
it.
everybody safe, including the person who identifies as a different
Right.
Exactly.
sexual orientation.
Might want to give our Title IX people a raise.
Yeah, and that also may pose a problem at the elementary, that elementary teachers may need to know about this policy change and Code of Virginia change, because they walk them and say, girls go in here, boys go in here.
But unless their parents have primed them, you're not going to have a 6-year-old say, I'm identifying as a boy today.
You might have a
Right.
fifth grader that might say that, but
Middle school and high school, you're gonna have that.
So I guess my advice would be to brief and train our teachers and our staff so they understand the law
yeah,
and our requirements
upcoming changes.
and the sensitivities as it regards to this. Because even in this forum right here, there was some misuse of terms with regards to how the LGBT, they identify. So I think people need to be sensitive. It's sort of.
I'll also add that we've determined next year that there'll be one gown worn by students at each high school. Historically, we've had a colored gown for female students and a gown color for male students. We'll have one color next year. So we're starting to make some of those changes.
It's pretty tricky, and my advice would be patient and prepare people.
Well, you gotta protect people. And that's everybody. That's just not a select group. It's not a whole group. You gotta protect everybody. And that's the way we gotta move forward with it. And if parents have a problem with it, they need to call the governor and your state folks. They're the ones making the law and bringing it down this way.
Any other questions about policy update?
I'll bring this back down for approval.
Okay, moving on to action items, claims for payment, Ms. Sechrist.
Good evening again, board. You all have been provided with the claim certification where the operating fund expenditures were $1,064,072.83. Food service fund, $11,806.14 for total expenditures of $1,075,878.97. Along with that, you have also received the list of claims as well as the check register, and I will be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept payment claims as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Yes.
Mr. Ladford?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Dr. Painter?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes. Ms. Seeker's purchase orders over 10,000.
Yes, board, we do have two purchase orders for you this evening, over 10,000. The first one is for Power School, which would be using technology funds. And then the next one is Public Consulting Group for Medicaid documentation and billing, and that would be using local various special education funds. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer those.
That's local funds out of the second one.
Yes, sir. Various. Special. Yes, sir.
And the first one is out of tech funds, which is also local.
Yes, sir.
And the hosting service, that's on a server somewhere hosted by Power School.
Correct.
And do they guarantee uptime?
They can,
What's the uptime?
99.9%.
Okay. That's pretty good. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Have a motion to accept the purchase orders over $10,000.
Chairman, I move that we accept purchase orders over $10,000 as presented.
Have a motion to have a second. Have a motion and a second.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Dr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Yes. Federal consolidation application in Title III. Eric?
Good evening, members of the board. Once again, Mr. Van Wyk at our last meeting presented the application for the Federal Consolidated and Title III programs. Based upon the feedback we received, I didn't feel like there was going to be a whole lot of questions. I'll do my best to try and answer any that are come up. But we're hoping for your approval here this evening.
I think we asked some questions the last time.
You did?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You have a motion to accept the Federal Consolidated Application in Title III plan.
I make a motion that we approve the federal consolidated application in Title III plan.
Second?
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Dr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on to board members' discussion time.
I would like to take this time and have a shout out for Mr. Van White. And thank you for all your years of service to the Page County Public Schools, all the different hats that you've worn over the years, and you've worn them well. So wish you well in your retirement. And again, thank you for all that you've done for our staffs, our children, parents, you name it.
Here, here.
Any other board members for discussion?
I've got a couple. I went to a track meet for the district a couple weeks ago, and it was kind of neat to watch all the contestants, participants working together. And even as they were competing against other high schools, the other high school players would kind of encourage them and show them, talk about how they were doing and encourage them. And that's something that we need in our school all around, from all levels. And lastly, I think Dr. Gonzalez, it's your last meeting with us, and I just want to thank you for your service. You've had 3 different chairs. You've had a pandemic that we haven't had since 1918.
Yeah.
We survived it, and I just appreciate some of the stuff you've done to be able to service things up metrics. I appreciate it. And also the teacher raises. I don't think it would have happened if your team wouldn't have put those together and put bugs in people's ears. So I appreciate that. I wish you well in your next thing, and hopefully you and our new superintendent will maybe cross paths and be able to work on some things. And lastly, I'm trying to get together with some places, particularly the rec center and our church fellowship hall, where Dr. Fox will be coming in to have a meet and greet with the parents. And I'll be announcing that through social media. Because I think that's one thing that, not that I was there the first year you were here, but you getting out in the community, we probably could have helped you do that a little bit better. So I'm going to try to do what I can. But Dr. Fox, she'd like to do it in the other districts as well. That's possible. And we find areas to do that. So that's all I have.
I have one more thing, and I would just like to ask everyone to keep the family of Larry Doffmeyer in your thoughts and prayers. Mr. Doffmeyer passed away 2 weeks ago now, and he was the first principal at Shannonville Elementary when it opens its doors as an elementary school in 1961-62. And he stayed there through my years at Shenandoah Elementary, and then moved and came back and so forth, and then taught and coached at both Shenandoah High School and Page County High School. And he's been a lot of things to a lot of people, from a mentor, a father figure, a coach, a teacher, an administrator, and a lot of people, you know, have a lot to be thankful for that they cross paths. And so I ask you to keep the family and everyone in your thoughts and prayers. And they're going to be fine, but it's never easy. So.
Never had a losing season in baseball as a coach. Never once.
He also used to turn his class string around and crack you on the head.
I've had a couple of knots. Yeah.
They were love taps. And
Yeah.
funeral, different ones spoke to that. They were love taps. And so, but
He always had a smile on his face though, so I could never even picture him doing that.
Any other board discussion? Okay, hearing none, we need a motion to go into closed session again.
I make a motion that we return to closed session. Do you need me to read that whole big long thing? Return to closed session regarding personnel, section 2.2-3711A1, pertaining to the discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for school board employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salary, discipline, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the school board.
Okay, I have a motion to have a second.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.